11 investigates case files. I'm Melissa Andrews along with Brian Duggar. It's a story that's bringing the immigration debate right to our doorstep here in Northwest Ohio. A 24-year-old Venezuelan man is in jail accused of enrolling at Perrysburg High School as a 16-year-old sophomore more than a year ago.
Now, police say anthony-labrador-case has been posing as a student for more than a year, even playing soccer and joining the swim team. So how did this happen? There's still a lot of questions about this story.
We learned about this, early last week. So today is, what's the date? The day after Memorial Day, if you're watching this at a later date. But we heard about this about a week ago. The school district, Perrysburg School District, sent out an email to parents informing them of this. And the first thought I had was, this is going so big. I mean, because this is what everybody's been talking about. It was perhaps the number one voting issue for Americans was immigration. And here we have, at the time, last week, so much has been changing every single day, but we have a 24-year-old Venezuelan national accused of posing as a high school student in Perrysburg and getting away with it for more than a year.
Yeah, and my first thought with this, Mel, was, what? When we heard that it was like a 24-year-old man posing as like a 16-year-old, I guess when he enrolled in Perrysburg, January 2024, at that point he said he was 16.
Enrolled as a sophomore, and then right before this all came out, he was a junior. And there's just so many implications here. Obviously, first, a lot of the social media conversation and talk among people in Perrysburg has been, okay, well, who did he interact with? Did he potentially date some female students? The sports thing was a big angle as well. We talked to people whose kids played against him on a soccer field. Were there implications for Ohio high school athletics? So there's tons of tentacles to this.
Yeah, we actually asked the Ohio High School Athletic Association about that, and is Perrysburg going to have to forfeit any of these soccer games or swim meets or anything? And they said no, because Perrysburg did not knowingly let a 24-year-old man play this. But when you talk about implications, the big thing is when you mention the interaction with other students. Yes, I mean, we heard that he likely had a girlfriend and that he had likely dated several other girls. And we were talking about this earlier today. I mean, everybody wants to know, was he having sexual relations with underage girls? And you pointed out that, in the state of Ohio, the age of consent is 16 years old. However, you made a good point if you just wanted to repeat what we were talking about.
Well, I think there is a difference, and I don't know what the law says, but I think there's a difference between age of consent being 16 and you're consenting to dating a person that you believe is X, Y, and Z, that is X, Y, and Z. But if he's posing as a similarly aged teenager, I think that should throw the whole thing out. I don't know exactly what the law says on that, though.
I mean, it would be shocking as a parent. I mean, you believe your daughter might be dating someone who's 17
maybe 18
years old.
or something, and then to come to find out he's 24 from a different country, posing. Obviously, all kinds of legal issues with that, too.
Yeah, so this story really came to us like last week, like you mentioned. On May 19th, he was arrested because what we found out in looking into this, that he had a daughter, I believe, with a woman, and she reached out to his guardians and said, look, this is not a 17-year-old kid. This is a 24-year-old man. He's the father of my child. She sent pictures of her and him with the child, his driver's license, which when he originally got his driver's license, his birth date was 2001. The one he submitted, the birth certificate that he submitted to Perrysburg, had him being born in 2007. So anyhow, So this woman reaches out to the guardians of this kid, and then she talks to the school district and says, this is what's going on. But the guardians, when they got this information from her, they actually went and looked underneath his mattress in the home, and what they found was a gun, cash, and a fake Michigan driver's license. And then she reaches out to Perrysburg at that point. Perrysburg then goes to
the guardians. Yes.
Yeah. The guardians reached out to Perrysburg schools. Perrysburg schools talked to Perrysburg Police Department and tell them. And then the police department reaches out to Border Patrol, and they are able to determine fairly quickly that this guy was not 17. He was indeed 24 years old.
Well, I talked to this woman on the phone who is the mother of his child. She answered the phone. Her name and phone number were not redacted from the police report. I initially called her and she said, I don't want to be any part of this. People are harassing me. I'm mad at them for putting my phone number out there. But she wouldn't hang up the phone with me. And I said, if you want to withdraw yourself from this situation and cease the harassment, you could just say what you thought the age to be and when. And we went around and around and around in that maybe 20-minute conversation where I asked her 5 different ways and there were about 5 different answers. At one point it was, I don't know, I'm just as confused as everybody else. At another point it was, I can't talk about that. At another point it was, what does that have to do with me? It doesn't change however old he is. So, it does matter, because if you are 22 or 21 at the time and he's not around your same age, then you're talking about being with someone who's very young. Or does she all of a sudden figure out he's posing in Perrysburg and that's when she decides to come forward? How long did she know?
Yeah, and this was a really interesting conversation, because I know you got on the phone with her and I could hear you talking to her, and I was surprised she answered. And then I went and heated up my lunch, and for like 4 or 5 minutes, and then I came back and you were still talking to her. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe this woman is still on the phone with you.
And we never named her, which I think is the right thing to do. Sure. I know the Blade named her and also the Guardian family, but in our mind, these people have not been charged with any criminal wrongdoing right now. So, let them have their privacy until the police come out and say that there was something nefarious going on with any of them.
Yeah. Now, we actually had a little sound from Hostler, the superintendent of Perrysburg. I want to watch that, and then I want to talk about Perrysburg and their involvement in this.
What's most heartbreaking is how our staff and community responded to a young person who said he was in need with compassion. They believed they were helping a child who had suffered trauma. That trust was broken, but how we responded says everything about who we are.
So this is very interesting, because I believe it's November 3rd, 2023, Labrador Sierra comes to Perrysburg and says, hey, I'm homeless, I've been from Venezuela, I'm in the country legally, but I've been human trafficked. And at that point, Perrysburg says, hey, you're going to need to go get a birth certificate and come back, and then you can enroll in the school. Now, we know that, I forget what the name of the federal law is, the McKinney-Vento Homeless Assistance Act says, like, if somebody
From 1987.
Yeah, if someone comes to you and says, hey, I'm homeless, I want to enroll, you're not supposed to ask for documentation. So apparently this is not what Perrysburg did. This is my understanding of the act. So they asked him for documentation, and so he goes away for about 2 months, and then he comes back with this birth certificate that says his date of birth is March of 2007, something like that. And at that point, even though he said he had been human trafficked, Perrysburg does not talk to Perrysburg Police Department and says, we may have a trafficking victim here. Now, we don't know whether or not they talk to Children's Services in
Which
Wood
is
County.
another place they can report it to.
Right, and we asked for this record, trying to get this information. They said we don't have to give you this information because of privacy issues. But we do know that when they reported it to Perrysburg Police, in just last week or the week before, Perrysburg immediately went to the Border Patrol. The Border Patrol has these biometric devices where they can scan people's retinas, like when they actually come across the border.
Well, and they're doing that in the airports now.
Yeah, and we know that he came into the country back in 2019 when he landed in Miami. At that point, he got some sort of documentation that allowed him to stay in the country until 2020. Then he applied for other documentation.
He's had work visas, yeah.
Right, and so this other documentation allowed him to be in the country till
2023, I believe, is
yeah.
when it expired.
Right. So when Perrysburg went to the Perrysburg Police and then they went to the Border Patrol, they were immediately able to figure out that this guy, I keep wanting to say kid, but he's not a kid, he's a man. This man was in the country illegally. He was really 24 years old.
So the issue then does go, because up until now, even I went to Perrysburg and just talked to people, and most of them were not blaming the school district and were waiting for more answers to come out, because at this time, this man said he was 17 and was being trafficked. So people were very gracious to take Perrysburg School District's word. But basically what now we're finding out is if Perrysburg had reported the trafficking claim to the police back in 2023, then he may have been intercepted before he could even get into the school.
I mean, it's certainly what it sounds like to me. I mean, we talked to the Perrysburg Police Department. They said it's not a written policy that we're going to go to the Border Patrol, but it's certainly standard practice. So if they would have done that back in 2023, my belief is that they would have gone to the Border Patrol and they would have identified him as being in the
And they've not
country.
commented on why they didn't do that. I have another concern, with this act that's been around since 1987. I keep thinking to myself, this can't be the only case where something like this has happened, because essentially what you're saying is any person, and you would think it would be well known south of the border at this point, hey, just show up to a school district and say you're homeless and they don't have to ask you for anything and in you go. I mean, so to me, how is this how are we not hearing about this daily if that's the case?
I think it's a really good question. You're right. I mean, I wonder that too. I mean, if anybody just shows up to the school district, says I'm homeless, I'm 17 years old, even though I might be 25 years old, they've got to let you in with no documentation.
It
at
sounds
all.
bizarre, yeah.
It does sound bizarre, and it really seems like a good playbook for a pedophile.
Exactly.
I mean, so what we also know is that besides getting hit with forgery charges for giving those false documents to the city of Perrysburg, later today, and again, this is the day after Memorial Day, don't know what day it is, but it's the day after Memorial Day. So he is actually
The 27th, we're told, so whenever you watch this.
So he is going to be in federal court this afternoon facing charges because he purchased a gun. And, in that application for that gun, he listed that he was a U.S. citizen, which of course was not accurate. So he was in the country illegally. He illegally purchased this gun. And we're talking serious penalties.
So how did they not find this on the gun background check, though? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
You would have to have a background
Yeah.
associated with this birth certificate or driver's license by then that he used to obtain this gun. Where did he buy the gun? Do we know?
Yeah, he bought it at Bass Pro in Rossford. So how that happened, I don't know, but he certainly has fooled a lot of people.
There's so many more questions. And where did he get the money for the gun? And, the foster parents having found a Michigan driver's license or something underneath that mattress too. That's another question. We don't know whether they thought this was just a fake ID that a teen had,
Sure.
in this case to make him look younger, I believe. But yeah, we don't know at what point. Certainly everything that's been released by the police and the district leads us to believe that they reported what they knew when they knew it.
I mean, he fooled a lot of people, including federal authorities with.
He did not fool some of these parents whose kids were playing soccer against him. I mean, we've got photos of that, and
We did talk to one of the mothers who kid was. My question is this. I mean, this kid's from Venezuela. I'm guessing soccer is a national sport.
I would have thought
there.
so too, but this was a 24-year-old playing on the
JV soccer team.
Yeah.
So, but one of the mothers, I mean, her kid, I think she provided us a picture of him. A kid looks just like this small child that he was, because he was 15 or 16 years old, versus, Anthony, who was 24 years old. And on his arrest document, he is 6 feet, 190 pounds. And I did talk to, I had heard from one of the police officers that actually ended up picking him up. And they had said, look, when we arrested this guy, there's no way this guy was 17 years old. I mean, he was just a grown man.
And there he is in the car with his child's mom again, which I would like more information. Did she participate, it sounded like in the documents, in sort of like an arrest sting, But he also said when when they were setting bond in Wood County that he'd go with her if they let him out. Yeah. Okay, so what we know right now, again, as of the 27th, this is changing by the day, is he has been moved from the Wood County Jail to Lucas County Jail to facilitate his movement over to the federal court this afternoon. One thing that people have asked me that I think we should clarify, because immigration is extremely complicated. There are so many different visas, temporary protection, or all kinds of status. This guy, he was in the process of applying for a trafficking visa. The attorney that was facilitating, think of a visa, I've been telling people, as kind of a file folder of information. And you've got to, as the attorney on record, say this birth certificate is valid, this driver's license is valid, all these paperwork are legal and valid, and then you hand it over. So the trafficking attorney that was working with him had not even really scratched the surface of this process. From what she told me, the school district and the foster family, the immigration attorney, and she as the trafficking attorney had been working together for a couple months prior to May 19th on a trafficking visa. But in the middle of this process is when it was revealed that this birth certificate may not be legitimate. And so that's what put the fly in the ointment on that. But it was being worked on for months.
Yeah, so when I looked at the federal document, the affidavit from the Border Patrol agent who is also working with the FBI, Anthony had obtained a temporary protective status, but that expired on September 9th, 2022. And then he went back and applied for, again, some additional documentation. But when he applied for that, he submitted his birth date as December 2nd, 2007. Whereas when he got that temporary protective status, he used his real birth date, which was 2001. So why he reverted and used, false data, it makes no sense. And then Mel, the big question is, why? Why? Why did this guy want to be a student at Perrysburg High School?
I think in the most basic form, someone probably said, just go say you're homeless over here. there's a lot of people speculating, and they find it very disturbing. Most people don't want to go back to high school.
Right.
But if he did, people in the community in Perrysburg are finding that very disturbing, because what do you have in high schools? You have access to underage girls, and so that is one thing that's being discussed. But, you'd like to, from what's out there and from what people behind the scenes are saying, sources very close to this have told our colleague Jeff Smith as well, that pretty much it's known you go up to the high school and say, I'm homeless.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's scary. So again, later this hearing, Anthony is facing significant charges. Whether he's actually going to stand trial here in the country, I don't know. I would be surprised if he is.
Well, this is where the whole immigration thing that's so complicated, it's almost like also the laws or the legal battles going on the national level change. I mean, there's decisions every day that get added and reversed. And one thing that I do want to say, someone that asked me is, so like, is he just getting deported? Well, no. First of all, in terms of an ICE detainer, which is what he's on right now, basically that means if for some reason he were to post bond in Wood County on these local charges, or he goes to court in Wood County and those charges for some reason get thrown out, that means that he does not get out. Wood County has to retain him so that ICE can come and collect him now, because now he's wanted by the feds. And then we now have the addition of the federal charges.
Yeah, and Mel, he's wanted by a lot of people. I mean, he's got federal charges, he's got the charges in Perrysburg, but we also learned late last week that he was picked up for shoplifting in Perrysburg Township at the Walmart on April 24th. And when he was arrested, he gave the police his false documents saying that he was 17 years old. So they originally charged him as a juvenile. They turned it over to the juvenile prosecutor. But then they find out that he's 24 years old. So they had to delete that
And he has
case.
a family in Oregon, which just further, because when I was talking to the woman who was handling, the attorney who was handling his trafficking visa application that, again, they were in the process of applying for, initially she felt like, I have nothing in front of me to show that he's not 17. And even if he was 24, she said, well, this is a very sad case. But is it? Is it?
I mean,
listen, we all are finding out more day to day, so no discredit to her. But now that we've found this family in Oregon, a history in Florida, is anyone suggesting that there is any tragic circumstance yet to this case?
I mean,
to his story.
I mean, we have not, I don't understand the trafficking thing. I mean, we have not heard anything, any evidence about him being trafficked.
Just his word to people that he was trafficked.
But I think it's pretty clear at this point, Mel, that he is not 17 years old. He is 24 years old. But you're right. I mean, we had discovered last week, I mean, we had, in one of the documents we had seen, there's this woman name listed who appears to be his biological mother. And, we found out she's actually living in Oregon until fairly recently. It looks like about 6 months, a year ago, she moved down to Florida. So we don't believe that she's here anymore, but it certainly raises the question, okay, if he was illegal, she was probably illegal. Did he have brothers and sisters?
And then the trafficking thing was definitely, not happening.
Yeah, I mean, if his real mom is in Oregon, either she was trafficking or that's just a total line of BS. And
yeah, more to come on that. I want to talk about a couple of things before we have to go. What questions do we still need answered from Perrysburg schools?
Well, ideally, yes. We would like them to answer the question of why did you not contact Perrysburg police in November of 2023? Maybe they're going to argue it was a student privacy issue. But I just don't think that's a valid argument. I think, I mean, you talked to Perrysburg Police, last week or the week before. Why wouldn't you at least mention it to them in 2023? Just say, hey, we got this kid, he says he's been trafficked. He's going off to look for his birth certificate right now. But maybe you could just do a quick search on him and see what
And
is going
Perrysburg's
on.
not really answering that question as of right now as to why they didn't report him to the police.
They're not answering that question. And, Perrysburg, I lived in Perrysburg for, 19 years, something like that. I have a great deal of love for the city. Tom Hostler, I have a lot of respect for him, but that is definitely a school district under attack. I mean, they've had several things that have happened when you've talked about teachers accused of wrongdoing. They've obviously they just passed a levy, but for years recently they were trying to get this. They've had to make all kinds of cuts, and now they get hit with this, and it's a lot. I mean, that's a very active community when it comes to schools. I mean, people move to Perrysburg because of the school district, and there's going to be a lot of people asking a lot of hard questions.
I thought the statement they put out maybe Thursday was everything that was needed. I thought it hit all the right points, but then with the question of the reporting it to police, I think they've got to go back to the drawing board, because here's the thing. Right now, people are giving them grace. The people that I talked to on the streets in Perrysburg, they said, to me, again, this is changing daily, to me, this seems like everything they did, they were supposed to do. But now we're getting information that may not be the case. And if it's not, I think they should find a way to, a lot of times school districts, they want to just back away from the media. The best thing to do is just to be upfront, whether it was a mistake or an oversight or we thought Brian was supposed to tell the police that and he didn't or whatever. You got to be honest about it.
Yeah, and I think they also need to come up with a clear policy. Now, we asked them if they had a policy on what happens if someone comes to you with trafficking claims, and they gave us this.
It was like a broad policy for similar
for like abuse and
right.
stuff like that. It
Neglected
certainly
things.
didn't deal with
trafficking or federal authorities.
Yeah, so I think at this point, after this happened, that should be a priority. Okay, let's come up with a policy. What do we do from this point forward?
And to their credit, they may not have, a lot of school districts may not have ever faced anything like this, most yet.
Right.
Let's talk about the federal court hearing today. This is closed to cameras. Federal courts are always closed to cameras. So is it going to be an arraignment or indictment, or has he been indicted?
He has not been indicted that I know. I mean, it's just going to be arraignment on the charges, which
gun charge.
which are the gun charge, and I think there's a couple others that
Maybe
they tacked
another
on there.
fake ID or something.
Right. So, maybe we're going to learn about where he's going to go. Is he actually going to face trial here? Are they going to send him to a detention facility and, expedite like a deportation from the country? I don't know. Hopefully we'll learn some more information.
But we believe, and this is another thing that's just so interesting about this, because it's changed so many times. I believe the Supreme Court ruled that each person has to be given a day in court, has to have some sort of hearing. But then I know that it came back like last week, there was a challenge to that. So do we even know where it stands right now in terms of whether he is required a hearing as a citizen of Venezuela or not?
I don't know, because I seriously don't. You're right. It has gone back and forth. The Trump administration and the court, they've been kind of fighting. Do we have the right to just take these illegal immigrants and just ship them out of the country without due process, or are they required? And it's definitely a battle in court right now.
All right, so we're going to have the latest on the hearing and everything else on WTOL 11 News. I believe we've got probably a lot of content on our YouTube channel. Have we put together a half-hour special on WTOL 11 Plus on this yet?
We haven't done a half-hour special, but I know we have a playlist And there were like 16 or 17 different
Yeah, because
stories.
this has been going, obviously it's been picked up nationally. And then once we get enough to bring you another episode on Case Files, I'm sure we'll do that too, because again, there's a lot of interest.
Absolutely.
Along with Brian Duggar, I'm Melissa Andrews. Thanks for joining us for 11 Investigates Case Files. We'll see you next time.